So Joe Biden has returned from the grave. He has emerged from the ashes, but not like a phoenix, more like a zombie, as he gives a brain-dead interview with the BBC where he defends his anti-American globalist policies of his administration, and also at the same time kind of concedes that his administration was a total failure when he says there is nothing that he or Kamala could have done to beat Donald Trump. You guys have been showing so much love on my videos. I have to say thank you so much. Keep smashing that like button, keep leaving comments, keep sharing. It is helping the channel grow tremendously. So please keep showing the support you guys have. It makes sure that all of my subscribers see my videos and pushes these videos out to new audiences. Now let's get into the good stuff. Here is the reporter asking Joe Biden if he should have stepped out of the race sooner to give Kamala a better chance.
You said, I'm the man who can stop Donald Trump. And you did once. And in the end, you withdrew from that election campaign at the last minute. It's a question you know lots of people ask you, Mr. President. Did you leave it too late? Should you have withdrawn earlier, given someone else a bigger chance?
I don't think it would have mattered. We left at a time when we had a good candidate. She was fully funded. And what happened was, I had become, what we had set out to do, no one thought we could do. And become so successful on our agenda, it was hard to say, no, I'm going to stop now. I meant what I said when I started, that I think I'm prepared to hand this to the next generation. It's a transition government. But things move so quickly that it made it difficult to walk away.
So he just exposed the entire grift. He said we were more successful than anybody thought we could be at carrying out our agenda. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but what was that agenda? Other than mass illegal immigration, letting new wars break out, massive inflation that ruined the middle class and made the wealthy even wealthier because they're the ones who own all the assets, radically destroy the cultural fabric of America by instituting divisive and racist DEI policies and pissing everybody off by essentially forcing them to accept gender ideology indoctrination to their children. That was the entire Biden administration. What am I missing? So he quietly admits that they were successful in their goal of destroying America. And then he also says it wouldn't have made a difference if he left earlier because even him, with his limited cognitive brain function, understands that the American people were not happy with what he did. All the billions in the world couldn't have changed the fact that Kamala Harris was tied to the hip to Joe Biden in all of his failures. And the Democrat Party, who was so afraid of the end of democracy, quite literally rejected democratic values and just anointed somebody to run as president. Now here he is saying he has no regrets leaving the race as late as he did because the Democrats were screwed either way.
It was a hard decision, but...
Regrets, though?
No, I think it was the right decision. I think that well, it was just a difficult decision.
But you shouldn't have taken it earlier.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know how that would have made much difference.
Now, I don't want to get into the conspiracy theories of it all, but if he's saying it wouldn't have made a difference, he's either one, acknowledging that they failed so badly, nobody had a chance to stop Donald Trump, or, and here's the conspiracy theory part, he's also openly admitting that the only reason Democrats won in 2020 was by them taking advantage of COVID and the weird election environment with mail-in ballots and the infrastructure not being able to properly and legitimately handle the way that the election was carried out. In my opinion, it's very odd that Kamala Harris got 14 million less votes than Joe Biden, while Donald Trump got essentially the same amount of votes that he got in 2020. Now, before he gets into trying to bash Donald Trump for the way he's trying to resolve the Ukraine-Russia war, here he is defending what he did when the reporter asks him if he was too weak.
But they sometimes say that you didn't have the courage to go all the way to let Ukraine win. You let them stop the invasion, but you didn't give them the weapons they needed, the long-range weapons, to really win.
Well, a few people do say that, but the idea that they could win without engaging NATO in a war, NATO having engaged the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, Russia, is not likely. We gave them everything they needed to provide for their independence, and we were prepared to respond more aggressively if, in fact, Putin moved again. But we needed to this is a tricky thing.
So what was the point? If he's saying we didn't want to give Ukraine the resources to win the war because we were scared Russia would retaliate in such a way that would drag NATO into the conflict, then what was your objective? What was your plan? Give them enough money to hold the line, be stuck in a stalemate forever? Give them enough to not win but not also lose? What was the end goal? What was the off-ramp that you saw? Oh wait, it was to create a forever war that would enrich the military-industrial complex. That's the only thing I can see. Ukraine has lost territory throughout this war. Yes, they defended themselves from Russia taking over their entire country, and kudos to the Ukrainians for doing that. But if your goal wasn't to equip them enough to give the Ukrainians a chance to expel Russia from their territory entirely, then how did you think this war would ever end? It highlights a significant problem with the Democrats, especially the Biden administration, is they were too idealistic and not realistic. Oh, we're going to defend a sovereign country. Oh, we're going to defend democracy. We're not going to support them enough so they can win the war, but we're also not going to advocate for them to give up any kind of territory or any concessions to let the war end. And here's where he starts slamming Donald Trump, the only guy with a plan to stop the killing, and saying that his strategy to end the war is no different than appeasement in the way that they tried to go about it with Hitler.
President Trump is now saying, look, if you want peace, Ukraine is going to have to give up some territory. Some people think that is common sense to say that. Do you think it's not common sense? It's perhaps modern day appeasement?
It is modern day appeasement. Look, listen to what Putin said when he talked about going from Kyiv into Ukraine and why. He believes it's part of Mother Russia. He believes it's a historical right to Ukraine. He talks about Eastern Europe. What this man wants to do is reestablish the Warsaw Pact. He can't stand the fact that the Russian dictatorship that he runs, that the Soviet Union has collapsed.
That is quite literally a contradiction from what he said in the last clip I showed you. Oh, why would you ever give up land to Putin? Do you think that he's gonna stop at Ukraine? Do you think this guy who has territorial, idealistic ambitions of reuniting the Soviet Union is just going to stop if you appease him? Well then, why wouldn't you have supported Ukraine enough so they could actually win the war? It proves this guy was brain dead. He had no plan. He had no strategy. All he did was give away $250 billion of US taxpayer money for no reason, with no end goal in sight. Putin must be stopped or else he's coming for all of Europe. Oh wait, we're not going to allow you guys to actually stop him. All he wanted was more money flowing from the United States to Ukraine so it could be skimmed off the top and funneled back to the Biden family. Again, it's this kind of lack of seriousness in almost every aspect that caused the American people to aggressively vote for Donald Trump instead of what Joe Biden did, and a continuation through Kamala Harris. But here's where he admits what we all knew. His goal was appeasing Europe. His goal was appeasing global leaders. He did not care if the United States was taken advantage of. His concern was not the American citizens. His concern was saving the world and protecting the global order.
I fear that our allies around the world are going to begin to doubt whether we're going to stay where we've always been the last 80 years. For example, when When we had the first G7 meeting, that is the leaders of the European nations in England, hosted by your government, we sat down the first meeting, I think it was in February, of my first year. And I sat there and I looked and I said, America's back. And Manuel looked at me and said, for how long? For how long? I take some responsibility and credit for rebuilding NATO. We added 2 significant powers to the NATO. 10 days before Dr. Kissinger died, he called me. And he said, not since Napoleon has Paris not looked over its shoulder at Moscow with a feeling of dread till you came along. NATO is stronger. They can't do that, they know. And so, in the meantime, I still remember what Manuel said. He said, for how long? Now here we are, we did all that, and in 4 years, we got a guy who wants to walk away from it all. I'm worried that Europe's going to lose confidence in the certainty of America and the leadership of America in the world to deal with not only NATO, but other matters that have a consequence.
Ah, great. France is happy that they don't have to worry about Russia. What he should have been worried about and why the American public was so angry is he had no concern for the American people. He's concerned with the well-being of everybody else except Americans. Instead of worrying about if we're reliable to France or to Germany or to Ukraine, maybe he should have been worried if the US government is reliable to its citizens. And that's the problem with these Democrat ideologues not living in reality, is Americans have no problem defending nebulous concepts like democracy and freedom, but not at the expense of our own well-being. When you ravished the country for years with hyperinflation causing everything to become more expensive, when you locked down the economy, locked down schools, caused everybody's children to be years behind where they ought to be, people start caring more about their own well-being, not the well-being of Ukrainians. And Joe Biden in the Democrat position was, how dare you? How dare you prioritize your own needs over the needs of Europeans, who also, in the same breath, love to disparage America for being this radical, crazy, gun-toting country with no free health care, with no, 2-year parental maternity leave, and then also turn around and expect us to defend them and their sovereignty anytime they get into a little spat with Russia. And the Democrats have continued this philosophy even after losing the election. They care about MS-13 gang members. They care about all the poor people of the third world that no longer get free stuff from USAID. They're rooting for Donald Trump to fail with his tariff strategy because they want every single country in the globe to maintain an unfair trade relationship with the United States. They scoff at the idea of bringing manufacturing back to the United States, even though it was manufacturing that led the middle class boom after World War II. Yes, I concede, as the global superpower, we have some obligation to maintain the world order, to maintain the way of life that everybody can benefit from. But it is ridiculous to force Americans to accept a situation where our standard of living, where our way of life has to be decreased in order for all of these other countries to survive. If some country in Africa can't survive without American foreign aid, that's not our problem. If Europe can't defend itself from an aggressor being Russia because they're more focused on providing free everything to their citizens and living in a socialist utopia, that is not our problem. But again, Democrats just want to maintain the status quo, and they fail to understand that the American people voted to take a wrecking ball to the status quo. If the philosophy of America first is some existential threat to the globe, that exposes how broken the world order was. Now, in this final clip, he tries to guilt trip the American people by explaining how other countries would tell him, we need the United States, we need the United States, thinking that the American people will be more sympathetic to that honorable responsibility than their own prosperity.
Do you believe that obligation is still respected by Donald Trump?
Well, he doesn't say it is. And I think the rest of the world, I know, one of the only advantages of being the old guy is that I've known every major world leader in the last 30 years, and I've known them personally. And I know all the major world leaders today. And I can tell you, the last meeting of the G7, meaning the NATO 7, anyway, or the G20, which is a larger group. As we left the meeting, almost every world leader would pull me aside and say, we got to keep NATO. My democracy is at stake. Every generation has to fight to maintain democracy. Everyone.
So he's saying that it's perfectly okay that we keep paying for everybody's loyalty because it's more important that Europe feels secure and protected than American citizens. He wants us to believe that we're supposed to allow 15 million illegal immigrants to pour into our country. We're supposed to support them with our social welfare system. We're supposed to maintain this insane national debt to protect Europe and everybody else because, oh my God, democracy is so important and we believe in it so much that we have to sacrifice our own well-being to make sure that everybody else is satisfied. And he wants to talk about Donald Trump being the one who's engaging in appeasement. If this interview taught me one thing, it was that Joe Biden didn't have a care in the world for the American people. His goal was making sure that a whole bunch of world leaders liked him because it made him feel powerful and important. And maybe, just maybe, he would even have a little bit of a point if the Russia-Ukraine war didn't even break out, if the Israel-Hamas war didn't break out, if his whole philosophy of Americans need to sacrifice their well-being to maintain global stability resulted in no new wars breaking out, everything being gravy and fine and peaceful, then he might be on to something. But all he did was perpetuate a situation where the entire world was reliant on American welfare. And because of that, because they were never forced to have any responsibility for their own well-being, the moment Donald Trump comes into office and says, all of this is done, I'm worried about the well-being of the American citizen, all of our supposed allies see it as a personal attack, see it as deteriorating alliances, see it as the United States being adversarial. And that's why his beloved NATO is at risk right now, because the American people see how the rest of the world acts when all we ask for is some fairness. The Democrat platform has always been about free stuff, free things for the citizenry. But what Joe Biden did is he fundamentally made the Democrat platform about free stuff for illegal immigrants and Europeans. And that is why the American people voted overwhelmingly for somebody whose entire platform was about America first. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a video, and I will see you guys in the next one.